The man had been on the ground for the past 30 minutes. His face was pressed into the dirt, his heart pounding so hard that it felt like it might burst. Cold water splashed on his head again, sudden and shocking, making him gasp. His clothes were soaked, clinging to his skin. The sun above was merciless, but he dared not move. A sharp voice cut through the tense air. "Look at you." He turned his head slightly. The bright sunlight made it difficult to see, but he could make out the outline of a woman in uniform, standing tall with her arms crossed. Her boot was just inches from his head. "You are a criminal," she said coldly, "and you will answer for all your crimes." Mike's lips were dry, his throat burning. He swallowed hard before whispering, "What crime are you talking about?" One of the other officers, John, crouched beside him and patted his shoulder like they were old friends. "Come on now, don't act surprised," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Another officer, David, stood near the patrol car, holding up a small, sealed package. Mike's chest tightened. No, that's not mine." His voice cracked with desperation. "I swear, I don't know how that got there." Mirabel let out a slow sigh, as if she had heard this excuse 1,000 times before. She bent down, close enough for him to see the sweat glistening on her forehead. "Oh, I'm sure it just appeared out of thin air, right?" she mocked. Mike's entire body tensed, his fingers digging into the dirt. "Please, this is a mistake." John clicked his tongue. "There is a way out of this, you know." Mike turned his head slightly. John was still smiling, but it was the kind of smile that made his stomach twist. "How much?" John said in a low voice. "Is your freedom worth to you?" Mike felt sick. His head was spinning. This wasn't justice. It was a setup, a trap, and he had just walked right into it. Many years ago, Mirabel was just a girl in a troubled home. Her father, a strong and angry man, believed that men should always be in control. Her mother was kind but full of fear. She never fought back, no matter how badly she was treated. Every night, Mirabel lay in bed, listening to the shouting. Her father would come home late, reeking of alcohol, slamming doors and breaking things. Her mother would try to calm him, but it never worked. The arguments would escalate into slaps, punches, and cries for help. Mirabel hated it. She hated how weak her mother seemed, how helpless she looked. But most of all, she hated her father. As she grew older, she made herself a promise. She would never be like her mother. She would never be weak. No man would ever control her. At 18, she joined the army. The training was brutal. The sun was relentless, the drills exhausting, and the officers merciless. But Mirabel pushed herself harder than anyone else. She had to be strong. She had to be feared, not pitted. Over time, she became one of the best. She learned to fight, to command, to obey orders without question. She felt powerful. She felt safe. Then she fell in love. He was a soldier too, charming, confident, full of sweet words. He made her feel special, like she was more than just a tough woman in a uniform. She let herself believe in love, in trust. She was wrong. One day, she found out he had been cheating. She felt foolish, embarrassed. She had let her guard down, and now she was heartbroken. But she didn't cry. She didn't let the pain consume her like it did her mother. Instead, she turned it into something else. After completing her training, Mirabel was assigned to a checkpoint unit on a busy highway. Her job was simple: stop and search vehicles, check for illegal goods, and arrest criminals. But there was a problem. The pay was too low. No matter how many hours she worked, it was never enough. Her colleagues, John and David, were drowning in their own financial troubles. John had gambling debts, and David had a family to feed. Then one day, everything changed. A wealthy businessman was caught with contraband in his car. He begged them not to take him to jail. "I can pay," he said, his hands trembling. "Just let me go." They hesitated. They knew what they were supposed to do: arrest him, take him to court. But then he pulled out a thick wad of cash. More money than Mirabel had ever seen in months. They looked at each other. And they took it. At first, it was just that one time. Then it happened again. Another driver. Another bribe. Another easy payday. Until Mirabel had an idea. Why wait for guilty people, she said one night, when we can create them? The scam was simple. Mirabel would stand on the roadside, dressed in plain clothes, pretending to be a stranded woman in need of a ride. A kind driver would stop to help. Once inside, she would secretly plant a small, sealed package somewhere in the vehicle. Then she would get down and call John and David, telling them exactly where to find it. By the time the driver reached the checkpoint, the officers would be ready. They would search the car, act shocked, and accuse the driver of smuggling. And then John would smile. There is a way out of this, you know. How much is your freedom worth? For months, they ran the scam. The money flowed. No one suspected a thing. Mirabel felt powerful, untouchable, until she met Tony. Tony was having a great day. The sun was shining. His favorite song played on the radio. In the back seat, his baby daughter slept peacefully. Then he saw her, a woman, standing alone on the roadside, looking helpless. Mirabel. Tony hesitated, then stopped. Are you okay? Mirabel smiled weakly. Thank God. My car broke down. I've been waiting for hours. She glanced at his sleeping daughter. You have a beautiful child. Tony relaxed. Where are you headed? Just up the road, she said. He nodded. All right, hop in. And just like that, the trap was set. Minutes later, as Tony approached a checkpoint, he saw officers waving cars down. He wasn't worried. He had nothing to hide. Routine check, one officer said. Step out of the vehicle. Tony obeyed. Then the officer searched his car and pulled out a small, sealed package from under the seat. Tony's stomach dropped. What is this? The officer demanded. Tony was calm. That's not mine. The officers exchanged glances. Or, John said smoothly, we can settle this now. Tony shook his head. Take me into custody. What they didn't know was that Tony had a hidden camera in his car, recording everything. The truth comes out. At the station, the inspector general recognized Tony. They had been classmates years ago. Bring me the footage, the inspector ordered. They watched as the truth played on the screen. Mirabel planting the package. The inspector turned to John and David. You are done. As Mirabel was brought in, she saw Tony standing beside the inspector. For the first time, fear flickered in her eyes. Do you regret it? The inspector asked. Mirabel let out a bitter laugh. Would it change anything? The inspector didn't blink. You know what happens now. She sighed, then nodded. I know. And just like that, it was over. A lesson learned. Tony's video went viral. People became more cautious. The police department was forced to act. And Mirabel? She sat alone in a cold cell, staring at the walls, realizing that for the first time, she was truly powerless. Some trusts, once broken, could never be repaired.